Well, I smell socialism, and we all know where that leads.
High literacy rates, low infant mortality, increased quality of life, fjords.
No, the government watching us on the toilet.
He was a terribly lonely man. Never married a woman in his life. Never married, no. He just had one close friend, and that's all it was. They were friends. And they wrote letters back and forth for years. Some call it romantic. I don't dare delve into that. Of course, I think they were just friends having a fun, friendly time. He never married a woman. He was just friends. I actually kept a lot of friends that would come in and out of the castle, in and out of his quarters. They were just friends, lots of friends. He was a very sociable, lonely man, never married. Lots of friends, though. And when he was an older man, him and his friend that he wrote letters to, as a prank, actually got a cabin in the woods because they're real manly men. He was very eccentric, and they lived together in the woods until they died, and they were buried together as a manly, lonely prank.
Wow, you guys sure have a lot of books about being a lesbian.
Like, life's so fun. Got my mini skirt and my rollerblades on. Bag on my side cause I'm out till dawn. Keeping it light like silk chiffon.
In a just-released video, prominent anti-trans campaigner Charlie Kirk, who runs the highly influential Turning Point USA, a conservative organization that opposes trans rights, among many other things, called trans people by disgusting terms. But one of the terms that he used was so gross that it was actually a little funny. Watch this clip with some content warnings, obviously.
The one issue I think that is so against our senses, so against the natural law, and dare I say, a throbbing middle finger to God, is the transgender thing happening in America right now. We are in a church, and so it's important to remember Deuteronomy 22:5, a woman shall not wear a man's garment, nor shall a man put on a woman's cloak. For whoever does these things is an abomination to the Lord your God.
A throbbing middle finger to God? That word throbbing is doing a whole lot of work here. You know, I think that a lot of trans people and LGBTQ people as a whole can say that we've been called abominations before. It's a very religious-laden terminology that's used to paint trans people as subhuman. And you know, all of these anti-trans campaigners, they like to pretend that their opposition to trans rights is because of science. But in reality, it's clear that there is massive amounts of religious justification used to target trans individuals. Anyway, the language is abhorrent, and I actually cut it off before he then goes on to dead name Leah Thomas, but it should be clear that this is just driven by animosity.
One of you little scoundrels out there made an uwu language, and I'm honestly so impressed. All the words are articulated using some combination of the sounds in owo and uwu. For example, the sentence, do you want to kiss me, is pronounced uwo, owo, uwo. But if you want to say, do you want to kiss me, with emphasis on me, you move the interrogative particle to the antepenultimate position to reflect the stress on the object. So you would say, uwo, wo, wo. Oh. They have a fully developed script, they have a dictionary, and they have a subreddit with 1,000 speakers. This is linguistics at its finest.
I'm gonna read a list of company slogans and replace the last word with autism. Just do autism. Got autism? Breakfast of autism. The best a man can autism. There are some things money can't buy. For everything else, there's autism. Think autism. Bet you can't eat just one autism. America runs on autism. I'm loving autism. Maybe she's born with it. Maybe it's autism. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is autism. Think outside the autism. Think autism. Taste the autism. Red Bull gives you autism.
Are you sure about that? Pause to read. So this guy claims up and down no one would start a socialist company. No one would run a company under socialist ideals because there's no profit motive. Okay, I want to introduce you to a couple of people. First up, this nice woman is Madeline Pendleton. She actually has a page here on TikTok. You can go and watch some of her videos. Madeline is a self-professed communist, and she runs her business as such, and it's a very successful business. They actually do profit sharing. You know, that company doesn't actually make any profits. Whatever money that doesn't need to be reinvested into the business in order for it to run gets split evenly between all the employees and herself. She does not make any more money than her employees. They also have fantastic benefits and unlimited PTO that they are encouraged to use. Honestly, every time I see one of her videos come across my feed, I leave a comment asking if they're hiring, but she hasn't gotten back to me yet. But okay, you know, that's one example. Maybe it's just a fluke. Well, I got another person I'd like you to meet. This gentleman right here is Dan Price. He's the CEO of a credit card company, Gravity Payments. Several years ago, Dan made the decision to cut his own pay so that he could give significant raises to all of his employees. And every economist, every supposed great mind in the financial world said that this was suicide for the business, that it would go under within a year. But no, Gravity Payments is fucking thriving. And you know, once again, he does not make any more money than his employees. I think they all start out at around $70,000 a year. Of course, they do still have profits, so it's not quite full socialism, but it's a step in the right direction. But hold on, I have one more for you. This is not a person, it's just a company. This is Stewart's. It's like a kind of a gas station ice cream shop hybrid that has stores all over upstate New York and Vermont. They have an employee ownership program going on, so 40% of Stewart's is actually owned by its employees. Which could also be translated to, they own the means of production. And you know what the result of that is? There are people who have become millionaires scooping ice cream for a living. It sounds to me like socialism is actually better at making people rich than capitalism is. But anyway, I hope this was informative. Have a nice day.
By the way, Elon Musk being able to single-handedly stop a military procedure of a country that he is not a part of is ridiculous. Like, there is zero reason that some guy should just be able to divert the course of entire wars because he felt like it and he had enough money, so he just did it. Like, this random nepo baby billionaire who is an active defender of people that share CP on his failing social media platform has just potentially altered, like, the entire course of a war. That is a power trip of, like, incredible, just fascinating proportions. Like, this dude got his feelings hurt and decided to shut down the capacity of a country to defend itself from being invaded. This is absurd.
Brad, society treats children like property, and that leads to violence. Think of being in an unhealthy or abusive relationship. You feel powerless, you're lied to, you're humiliated and shamed, you're constantly surveilled, and if you're threatened or physically punished, it's because your partner loves you. We can agree that this is all violent behavior, but for some reason it's a different story with parenting. I'm not saying we shouldn't protect our children and let them do whatever they want, but I am saying that this behavior doesn't scream loving relationship to me. And this is normalized, because in modern society, children are their parents' property. They don't have human rights until they're 18. If you call out an abusive parent at a grocery store, the parent will likely tell you, "Don't tell me how to raise my kids," as in they own them. Respect for ourselves and others is real love. And if we're not treating our children like human beings and giving them honesty, genuine care, and dignity, we shouldn't be surprised when they learn to lie, manipulate, and be violent. Read bell hooks. I want to eat that.
Why are there no trans men fighting to be in men's sports? It's
because they don't have to fight to get in. The binary you've set up requires that women are seen as inherently weak and fragile and in need of male protection. And you need to set up trans women as being men in disguise so that they can prey on the inherently weak and fragile. And when trans men come along and they look like men and they aren't fragile like you view women to be, it breaks your entire narrative. Trans men also regularly win in competitions. There was a trans boxer a couple weeks ago, KO'd his opponent in the first round and did the same thing a couple weeks before before that. And it's because they train so much harder, because they are training to compete against an opponent that they've been told their whole lives are inconceivably stronger than them. And that just means they train harder than cis men. Trans women, on the other hand, have to start training in a body that has significantly less muscle mass because of HRT, competing against people who have been existing in that same biology their entire lives. But even if they were to win, it'd still be a loss because you would just use it as proof of their existing male biology. I do find it equal parts weird and interesting you won't show your face.
We are living in a culture that undervalues and demonizes femininity and values and privileges masculinity.
I always find it funny when white queer people get on here and try and have these like deep nuanced takes that literally only apply to them. Because this idea that masculinity is somehow rewarded and given so much privilege in society only applies to white people. Because if that were the case, Black people would be on top in society because of how over-masculinized we are as a people, and that's just simply a fact. Black men are over-masculinized in our society. Black little boys are over-masculinized in our society. You have police officers treating 12-year-old black boys like men and putting them through the police system and trying them as adults. Like, this idea that masculinity is somehow a privilege does not fucking apply. You see this with black women who have been removed and ostracized from the feminist movement. You see this where they've been removed and ostracized from this idea of womanhood, as if they're not women. They've been treated as not women, historically speaking, and over masculinized, right? So if this is the case, why are we not on top if masculinity is somehow this great rewarding thing? And not only that, but if we are talking in the grand scheme of things, this idea that masked lesbians or whatever the fuck in society are getting all this privilege by being masked lesbians, I'm sorry, but that's simply not fucking true. Maybe other queer people are more attracted to masculinity, but that's not a privilege. Like, I'm saying statistically, black masculine presenting, non-conforming black people, queer black people, are more likely to face physical violence than more feminine presenting queer people. Okay, that's a fact. So I don't know where all this privilege you're talking about is, but it's not fucking true. Like, it's not fucking true at all. I would simply make the argument that femininity is infantilized in society. Now that you could make a fight for that it's infantilized, even when we look at our criminal justice system and how women and men are tried for certain crimes, and we can look at sexual assault towards men versus, like, if men are doing it versus if women are doing it. We can look at those statistics. But I would definitely say infantilized. I would not say that masculinity is an overarching privilege for everybody in America, because it's not the case. And this is my issue when we have identity politics and you have white people making the charge for identity politics, when, I'm sorry, and this might be a hot take, but I do not think that intersectionality is for white people, because at the end of the day, no matter how many boxes you check off, you're still white at the end of the day. And that's how you end up having white queer women saying that they're more oppressed than black men in our society. So it's just like, can y'all please get on here and use your brains and not say weird shit online that doesn't make any fucking sense, because you don't live in reality. You live in this little bubble where you don't see yourself as white. I don't know. Like, I don't know if you're, like, in school, but, like, please go to school or something, or, like, go outside. Like, go outside in the world. I don't know.
The message of the film is be gay, as far as I can tell, or just be yourself, but preferably be gay, because being gay is better.
The communist revolution is, by definition, and for the first time in history, the revolutionary movement of the vast majority in the interests of the vast majority. If it is not that, it is not communism.
Right on. And you know who the people of the global majority are? You know who the people of the global majority are?
Yo, black woman who was taken away from us because the person thought she was trans. Yes, you heard.
And this is why I said that those anti-drag bills were going to affect black cis women disproportionately. Let me explain. Make sure y'all go back and watch Conscious Lee's entire video where he breaks down what happened to this black woman who was living in Indiana, who was murdered by a man who thought that she was a trans woman. She is just a cis black woman. He said that he thought that she was trans and that he would kill her again if he had the chance to. The reason why I reflect these back to the anti-drag legislation and to the anti-drag laws is because Republicans and conservatives are really incentivizing the murder, the policing, and the targeting of people who they assume and otherize as trans. So now they're telling black women, you have masculine features, therefore I think that you're a man. This is something that black women are constantly going through because you are not seen as dainty, you are not seen as pure, you are not seen as beautiful according to the European beauty standards. Because they say your nose is broader and your lips are fuller and you have a thicker neck, quote unquote, these are the stereotypes that people apply to cis black women's bodies since slavery. Remember, this is the kind of stuff that people were saying about Michelle Obama, saying that she looked like a gorilla. So when they make these anti-drag bills, all this legislation, you get to look at people's bodies now. You get to examine them. You get to say, I don't think that you belong here. I think that your body is criminal and I'm gonna do something about it because the law has told me that we should be doing something about it. So now people are taking it into their own hands, seeking justice, patrolling the streets, antagonizing black women, and labeling them as trans and murdering them. This is why I keep telling black women, we cannot, as cis black women, be transphobic. Because when we are always going to end up hurting ourselves. There's no need for black women to be transphobic because all of it is anti-blackness. All of it is patriarchal, and all of it is in opposition to our existence. Learning is loving. Black women, I hope that no more of us have to be murdered for us to understand just how important it is to help trans women as the country is coming and fighting against them. Don't let them unify and rally against black trans women because they will use this as an excuse to murder all of us.
I have some work and I'd like you to do it for me. Like a job? That sounds great. It is great. Yeah, but it's not a job, it's an opportunity. Is it a paid opportunity? It's a life-changing opportunity. Life-changing because the salary is so high? Because you'll learn how to apply for food stamps. What? Oh, unless you'd prefer to starve for your craft. I would prefer not to starve. Well, look at you, you little capitalist. That's so cute. I'm not espousing an economic or political ideology. I just don't want to take a job that doesn't pay a livable wage. Of course. Yeah, no one would expect you to. This isn't a job. This is an opportunity for you to deliver me the deliverables that I need. And we haven't even talked about the perks. What are the perks? Well, first of all, you'll learn a ton, and then there's the exposure. Neither of those are money. So all you care about is money. What do you usually exchange your labor for? For money, right. I don't see the connection. I also need money to live. I thought you were supposed to be fueled by passion. Yeah, you can't eat passion.
Anytime I do commentary on blackface, I get asked about this episode of Community, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. And truthfully, I have always given this episode a pass because I didn't feel that it was connected to the tradition of blackface, although the character was painted black. And if you haven't seen this episode, Ken Jeong's character is dressed up like something called a drow, which exists in Dungeons and Dragons. They are all kind of around a table playing a game of Dungeons and Dragons, so I'll show that to you now.
This is gonna be awesome, yo.
So we just gonna ignore that hate crime, huh?
I'm a dark elf or a drow.
So he's a dark elf, and it was explained in the moment, and I was willing to just let it go. And I love Yvette Nicole Brown's line in that moment. We're just going to ignore this hate crime here. It was hilarious. So I was really willing to give this a pass as not being a racialized form of blackface, even though the character has black skin. I mean, it feels like there should be an allowance for characters to just have dark skin, right? And for it not to be about race. Until I saw a specific YouTube video that does a commentary on this by someone who understands the world of Dungeons and Dragons, which is not a world that I know anything about. The video is called Community Dungeons and Dragons and Drow Blackface by a user named Games with Greg. So this is what the user Games with Greg has to say about this episode and Dark Elves specifically.
Opportunity to talk about Dark Elves in fantasy games. Dark Elves, or Drow, were originally created with Dungeons and Dragons back in the 1970s. They were created as a separate type of elf with dark skin and white hair, just as Chang portrays them in the episode of Community.
I am Brutality, the magician. Magic user, baby. What?
In their descriptions within the game of D&D, this is an entire race of people with dark skin who are evil and meant to be feared. The original artwork of Dark Elves show them with short, curly hair, further separating them from the normal and good light-skinned elves who have long, straight hair. Later depictions of the Drow, which focused more heavily on their women, show them with longer, more voluminous curly hair that evokes the kind of hairstyles black women wore in the 1970s and 80s. In addition, their more revealing outfits and hypersexualized bodies and poses are in line with the racist fetishization of black women, otherwise known as jungle fever, prevalent in that era, certainly indicating the influence of racist stereotypes on dark elf design. We need to acknowledge that racial biases have informed the creation of Drow in fantasy games, that there are problematic racial overtones in portraying an entire community of dark-skinned people as being evil, while light-skinned people are not.
I know, right? Like, it's deep. It's deep. And he has a lot more to say about that. I would highly recommend watching his full video. Again, the user is Games with Greg. The title of this video is called Community Dungeons and Dragons and Drow Blackface. This is just a reminder to me that there is very little in the world in which we live that does not carry some sort of racial coding, racial subtext. It permeates the world in which we live. And we can either be ignorant of it or we can be informed by it. That's our decision.
I'm on vacation, but please welcome Chesko, the speech prof.
I'm supposed to be Neil today? Okay, give me a second. Hit me with it. Okay, well, I'm not going to critique this young man. He might genuinely be just so angry he can't do more in the fight against period crimes. There is a far more insidious act, not with this man, but in general, that this is a great jumping off point to talk about. And that's the idea that you should be getting rewards and credit for imagined scenarios that may never actually happen. There have been many surveys throughout the years asking men in long-term heterosexual relationships, why don't they do more around the house? Right? Why don't they do more cooking, cleaning, etc.? Why is it that they are allowed to just relax while their spouse does all of the home chores? And the answers are always these large imaginative things. You know, if someone breaks into our house, I'm going to be the one to defend us. If we're out driving and the car gets a flat tire, I'm going to be the one to change that tire. And while these scenarios are feasible and not beyond the scope of imagination, the fact is they're still expecting praise and credit for something that has not happened, for an imaginary scenario as opposed to the real tangible scenario of actual work around the house. So if you are a man and you have used those excuses at home as to why you do not want to help your spouse until you are fighting off throngs of evildoers trying to break into your home on the daily, maybe just do the dishes every night.